here tonight. Thank you for making this a part of your Wednesday night, part of your week as well. We're going to be in Mark chapter 15, and then we're going to go to another book, another gospel for tonight. So this first part of the class I'm going to use as a lecture, just because we have a major character in the trial of Jesus making his appearance. It's Pilate. So we really need to know just who this man is, kind of what led him to do the things that he did. The way the scripture presents Pilate, he just kind of appears on the scene, and it kind of just looks like he was just caught up in the wrong place at the wrong time. And you get the sense, or you may get the temptation, oh, well, my heart kind of goes out to Pilate. Poor Pilate. That's not really the case. Pilate is very ruthless. He's a historical figure, and he really deserved everything that came his way for the actions. So I want to look at it at who is Pilate. So when he appears on the scene, he is called a prefect, if you're looking at your scripture, or governor, if you will. But he's essentially the military commander of the region. So the region of Judea, Galilee. Pilate is the military commander of all the Roman military, everybody that's there. He is over everything, and he is in charge of keeping the peace of the area. Rome doesn't really care what citizens do. You really can just kind of march to the beat of your own drum. But if you create a disturbance, Rome would squash it. And they would put prefects and governors, men like Pilate, and their main task was to keep peace and collect taxes. If you did those two things, you would be in power and in office forever. Pilate is in Jerusalem for Passover because, again, you've got a mass amount of people coming to Jerusalem. You've got just a lot of people, the possibility of a lot of things that could go wrong. So he's there to oversee everything. He normally is outside of Jerusalem. He's somewhere around in the Judean area. He is not set up as a headquarters in Jerusalem. He is only there because of Passover all the way through Pentecost. So he's going to be there probably for about 2 to 3 months at the most. But in order to really understand who Pilate is, we got to tell his story by telling the story of another guy, because they're intertwined. We got to tell the story of Aelius Sejanus. He was a consul to Caesar. A consul was the highest elected office in the Roman Empire. You were almost the right-hand man of Caesar. He would lean on you. Caesar had absolute authority, absolute power, but it would be the consul and others who would kind of just carry out what Caesar wanted. In October of AD 31, this gentleman was executed in a plot against Emperor Tiberius. He was going to create an uprising, an insurrection. He was going to be part of that. He's a co-conspirator, and he is going to be executed in that. Once he is executed, Pilate slides into that role, and he kind of absorbs those responsibilities. So Pilate has all eyes of Rome are on Pilate, and they are on this area. Sejanus was especially known for his hatred of the Jewish people. We've modernized this hatred in terms of being anti-Semitic. But Sejanus is one of those who there is no good Jew. It doesn't matter what it was. He had so much hostility towards them and for them. And under his consulship, the Jewish people would constantly just be in hostility with him and against him. They just knew, you're our enemy. We're going to make life miserable for you because you're making life miserable for us. So they constantly clashed. After he is executed, Tiberius calls for the hostility to end. So every person who is in power, including Pilate, your job, besides keeping peace and besides collecting taxes, is to ensure that peace between Rome and the Jewish people is maintained. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, about 3-4 decades worth of history. And you can Google this, you can look this up if you want. So when Jesus is brought to Pilate, who are the ones that are bringing Jesus to Pilate? All right, the Jewish leaders. Are they happy? No, they are ready. They are bloodthirsty. They want this guy gone. They finally have the opening. They want to try him. They want to kill him. They want to do all of these things. And I say people, it's the religious leaders. But if you're Pilate and you don't know anything that's transpired, what do you see? If you're a Pilate on the outside looking in, what do you see? Okay, jealousy, but even more, what do you see? Based on what we just said right here. Okay, trouble. We've got a powder keg, and the one thing Tiberius told me to do was to keep peace. So here is the rock and the hard place that Pilate is in. If Pilate frees Jesus, as he should, the Jews will tell Caesar, remember we have no king but Caesar, they will tell Caesar, they will revolt against Pilate, they will go above his head, they will tell Caesar, they will cause all kinds of commotion, and Tiberius will have Pilate executed. You know how he knows that? Because he executed his predecessor. So what happened to him? What happened to me? If he frees Jesus, if he has Jesus killed, he is killing an innocent man. There is no win for Pilate. Now there can be, because what should Pilate do? Free him. Right? Anybody who looks at this case, and we looked at it last week, anybody who looks at this case should have no problem being able to say, this is a farce, this is travesty, let this man go. And what's interesting is Pilate tries to do that several times, doesn't he? Based on your memory, how does he try to kind of free Jesus? Okay, we got Barabbas. Okay, bargain for Barabbas. What else does he do? Okay, he sends him back, and who does he specifically send him to? Herod. He sends him to Herod. So he sends him to Herod, he sends him to Barabbas, and then quite simply, he just tries numerous times, he's your king. I mean, are you really sure you want to do this? This guy's innocent. I wash my hands. All these types of things. That's because Pilate knows. I cannot outright come out and say he is innocent because they're going to revolt. And I'm going to die. But if I kill him, I know in my conscience I'm having an innocent man killed. He does. He admits, I find no fault. So he tries everything he can, which is interesting because he knows what to do and he doesn't do it. So go ahead and turn to John chapter 18. Go ahead and turn to John chapter 18 because I really want to look at this conversation between Pilate and Jesus. And John is the one that records it. So Matthew, Mark, and Luke give us some insight to it. But John is the one who really gives us the details in this conversation. So while you're turning there, I'm going to try to just show you a couple of pictures because Jesus is bouncing back and forth between different places. So Adam mentioned that Pilate sends him back to Herod. So Jesus appears to Pilate twice. The first time, I don't want anything to do with him. Send him to Herod. Go there. This is what Herod's palace looked like, King Herod. And we've already talked about it. I'm not going to give into a lot of detail, but this is where Jesus would have gone to be interrogated by Herod. And Herod doesn't really do any type of interrogation. Jesus is quiet. He doesn't open his mouth. He doesn't do anything. But you can see a gentleman standing there. I don't know how well you can, but you can see a gentleman standing there, and you could see it today if you wanted to. If you did Google Earth, you can kind of look at that. So he goes back to to Pilate's place, which is called the Praetorium. And Pilate has a palace, a little makeshift palace there in Jerusalem. This is kind of what it would have looked like. This is kind of a replica of what the Praetorium would have looked like. So he had a Praetorian guard. He had all sorts of things Pilate did at his disposal. So just envision Jesus, being brought back. Herod doesn't find any fault. Pilate's got to contend with him. He's got to deal with him. He's just not going away. So just imagine Jesus walking up these steps, he and Pilate, and they go in behind closed doors and have an intimate conversation. And it's the two of them. And what we're about to read in John chapter 8, verses 33 through 40, is that conversation recorded for us. And what's interesting is I mentioned this last week. Jesus is on trial. Peter, to a certain extent, goes on trial in the outer court. But Pilate is also put on trial. But instead of Pilate being the one who asks the questions and interrogating Jesus, it's actually Jesus who is interrogating Pilate. because Jesus' mission is to come and seek and save the lost. That includes even a Pilate, for all he's worth. So let's look at that. We're going to take the time to actually read it, because I know that that was not part of our reading in John 18. But just listen to this conversation and then just some questions in regard to Pilate. So we're going to begin with verse 33. So Pilate entered his headquarters again. So this kind of that palace where that Praetorian is, and called Jesus and said to him, "Are you the King of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "Do you say this of your own accord, or did others say it to you about me?" Pilate answered, "Am I a Jew? Your own nation and the chief priests had delivered you over to me. What have you done?" Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would have been fighting that I might not be delivered over to the Jews. But my kingdom is not from this world." Then Pilate said to him, "So you are a king?" Jesus answered, "You say that I am a king. For this purpose I was born, and for this purpose I have come into the world, to bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth listens to my voice." Pilate said to him, "What is truth?" After he had said this, he went back outside to the Jews and told them, "I find no guilt in him. But you have a custom that I should release one man for you at Passover, so do you want me to release to you the King of the Jews?" And they cried out again, "Not this man, but Barabbas." Now Barabbas was a robber. So the other Gospels tell us that Barabbas was also an insurrectionist, and he was a zealot. So there's a lot of things, and insurrectionist has been a buzzword for us lately. There's a real one in terms of Barabbas. So, John 18:34. Pilate says, "Hey, are you the King of the Jews?" And Jesus has a twofold question. Are you saying this on your own accord, or are you saying this because somebody told you to say it? So I want to cast it kind of in some modern language. If Pilate answers that question to Jesus, well, I'm asking that because I'm curious. I want to know. I really want to figure that out. If he says that, what does that mean? If Pilate says, "You know what? They came beating on my door. They said that you were the King of the Jews. All I'm doing is repeating what they said." What does that mean? I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. Adam.
Well, Pilate knows that Herod was not king.
Okay, yes.
He was appointed by Rome. So he's not a Jew. So Pilate is curious. Is this man really the King of the Jews? Because I don't know who is the King of the Jews. So the curiosity is there, first of all.
All right.
And then when listening to Jesus, he accepts the fact, okay, you are the King of the Jews. You're not even intimidated by me.
All right. So Adam is going with that, Pilate is, there's this curiosity. And it's not, and I'm not just saying he's curious as like you're curious. It is, are you curious enough to find out the truth and actually come follow me? That's kind of the idea. In other words, Pilate, have you paid attention to the evidence? Are you weighing everything yourself? Or are you basing your questions on what someone else had to say? So I got Adam who said that. Anybody else? Stores.
Kind of going along with that, it seems like even at that point, he's trying to reject any responsibility for his decision.
Okay. It does seem like that. One way or the other, he is trying to absolve himself. Even though he's going to have the final say-so, he's trying to absolve himself from it. And Jesus will not let him do that. Jesus will not let him exit stage right without doing something. So, yes, sir.
If it was curiosity, he would be showing that he put himself into the trial.
Okay.
He wanted to keep out of the trial.
All right. So if there was a genuineness, even a glimmer, that curiosity is maybe faith-filled curiosity. You're right. He would have inserted himself more. And even maybe with his acknowledgement, he could have said, "I find no fault with him. I'm letting him go." It very easily could have done that.
There's only one king, and that's Caesar. And if he's putting himself in that position,
Yes.
then he's giving Pilate an out.
He is giving Pilate an out. But here's the thing, and I'm glad you brought that in, because a major thing of the Roman Empire was Caesar is Lord. And there is no competition with Caesar. So if Pilate acknowledges you are the king of the Jews, what does he say?
King other than Caesar.
There is a king in Caesar's empire. And that doesn't exist. There are no, extra presidents. There is one. There is one Caesar. There is one person who sits on that throne. And for someone to lay that claim and say, that's who I am, and he's walking around and he doesn't renege on that, he doesn't correct people, he is a direct threat to the empire. But he's also a direct threat to Pilate, because if Pilate says that, that's treason. And Barabbas is in prison because of insurrection, right? Which is a revolting, rebelling against them. This is all that's happening. Yes, ma'am.
When Jesus says, what does he use, which terminology? My kingdom
Yes.
is not of this world. He directly removes any controversy he has with Caesar, because only in this world would Caesar even be interested in anybody trying to play antagonist to him.
Hold that thought. We'll get there in just a minute. Hold that thought. Yes, it would if somebody's listening. But people in the world, people in society don't listen for that type of thing. So hold that thought, though. We'll get there in just a minute. If Pilate answers and says, you know what, I'm just simply asking what the Jews are saying. I'm just repeating that. What does that mean? What does that tell us about the heart and the mind of a Pilate? You know what, I'm just repeating what I've been told. Just to be honest with you, I don't want you here. You don't want to be here, but this is what I'm being told. What does that mean, Bob?
He doesn't seem to be exercising the authority that he's supposed to have and be exercising on behalf of Caesar.
Okay, so from a political standpoint, it means that he's not exercising what Caesar is placed in his hands to exercise. You are supposed to make decisions. Keep the peace, pay taxes. That's what you're here for. This is why you're in that office.
I'm tempted to guess that he has to go against his own insight. Leaders who are real leaders have this gift and experience and ability to have insight. They can see through the noise and see what the real issue is. And he potentially sees through all the noise, and it's not a kingship of a crown with a name on it.
Right.
It's a kingship that obviously you are a leader of the Jews, because my insight tells me I can see you actually deserve, you actually have earned, or you actually not even earned, you play the role.
Yes.
My insight tells me I know you play that role. And so he's faced with having to know his insight, which Jesus probably knows he has. People in those positions usually have to have that insight to stay in that position very long.
Yes.
And he has it probably, and even acknowledged in John. And he's faced with that, right?
Yes.
So he's having to go against his own insight to play that silly, superficial game. Well, they tell me you are. They already know between the two of them that's not the case.
Right.
The two of them, they have more insight than that already.
They do. And what Jesus is doing is the same thing he did with the woman at the well. He's trying his best to draw that out of the heart of Pilate. And Pilate, the decision that he has to make is I either play the game and keep my head, not just my job, but I keep my head, or I give in to the insight and I become what we've seen all four Gospels, but the Gospel of Mark really highlight. I become like the leper. I become like the woman, the Syrophoenician woman. I become like these disciples. I become like all these others who acknowledge your king. I will follow you. Adam.
Here's one of the things that I think we don't focus on. There may be a genuine fear of Jesus, because, his thought is, why the nation of Israel, why are these leaders so afraid of this one man? You know, if they wanted to get rid of it, they could have got rid of it.
Sure.
And it wouldn't have to come before me. So why are they fearful of this man? And that's why when he talks to Jesus, there's somewhat of a respect, a sign of respect in dealing with it, and a sign of fear too.
Doors.
And your history text as to how much knowledge Pilate actually had of Jesus before these weeks that were coming up?
No. But the assumption would have been nothing, if he's doing his job, nothing is escaping his eyes and his ears. So even with the insight, there's enough that he would have known who this Jesus of Nazareth was. And his wife has a dream. You know, so there's that, that's depicted as well.
Well, what about these conversations Jesus has? Jesus already knows the outcome,
He does.
but he still has these conversations. I always think about it in those contexts, and it's even a third thing. You know, what's Jesus' goal? He already knows what the outcome is. He already sees the process happening. He knows he's going to be crucified.
He knows.
And yet he's still interacting with people on this level.
Yes. Yes.
So,
He knows for sure. I mean, Judas, you know, all of this is happening, but everybody deserves a chance. It's nowhere written that Pilate will do this. So Pilate deserves a chance. It's nowhere written that Judas, by name, will do it. Somebody will do it. Everybody deserves a chance, which, as a side note, we can't write people off, no matter how bad we may think they are at this moment and how far gone they are. Because we don't get to determine who gets an opportunity and who doesn't. The Lord decided that everybody got an opportunity today. Who am I to decide that somebody doesn't get that from me? You know, so that's what Jesus is doing, but you're right. It's fascinating to see this. Here's the thing that I really wanted to go with. This is what, and we've been in the Gospel of Mark, but this is what all four Gospels are designed to do with me and you as the reader. There is ample time and ample evidence for you and for me to know who this man is, this Jesus is. And at some point, and we've been kind of laying this groundwork through the entire Gospel, a decision has to be made. He will not go away. He will not go away. You can absolve yourself from the responsibility, kind of like Doris, what you're talking about. It could be fear that's driving it. It doesn't really matter. Every single person has got to make a decision about Jesus one way or the other. And even if you say, well, I'm undecided, that is a decision of itself. And Jesus, and here's the thing about our faith, and this is where I really wanted to come and kind of hit home for us, is your faith right now, is it because you were curious, or is it because someone else told you and you just built off of that? Is my faith just because somebody else told me and I went with it? That's just what I was told. Or, as time has gone along with your faith, as we would say, did it turn personal? And for some of us, we may be, you know what? I'm a Christian. That's really just kind of what I was told all my life. I never really made a decision. I just made the decision to listen to mom or dad or whoever stood up here, which is fine. I'm not saying don't listen to me. But at some point, I get into Pilate's shoes, and he looks at me. So Tom, these questions, he looks at me. Is what you're saying and what you're asking, is that because you really want to know? Or is that because somebody else just told you and you're just repeating what you've heard? That is a huge thing. Very quickly, yes.
I hate to spoil the ending, but isn't it Pilate that, well, the reason I'm saying this, I always thought, looking back from the later part of this gospel, when the sky darkened, the earth shook, and the veil rent in two, wasn't it Pilate who said, surely that man was the Son of God?
No, ma'am.
Who was it?
It's just a centurion.
Oh, okay.
No, not Pilate. We don't know anything about Pilate after this other than when he dies. And he dies in AD 39, and the history books, you mentioned history, Miss Doris, Eusebius records that Pilate dies by his own hand, by suicide at the order of Caligula. There's no indication whatsoever what happened after that. You mentioned a minute ago his kingdom. Why does Jesus define his kingdom the way that he does? Which, by the way, he doesn't really answer the question that Pilate asked. Did you notice that either? He just kind of ignores it and goes right into, my kingdom is not of this world, and it's a bookend. My kingdom's not of this world. Well, how do I know it isn't? Because they would be fighting. They're not fighting, so it's not of this world, right? So this bookend. Why does he define his kingdom? I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but why does he define it the way that he does? Yes, ma'am.
To indicate that there's no end to his kingdom.
Okay, there is no end to it. It is, I was king long before this. Yeah, I never really stopped being king, to be quite honest with you, but yes. Yes.
Protects his disciples, perhaps.
I think that there is something, at least, the shepherd is still protecting. Even though they've left, the shepherd is still running the course. Okay? What else?
And just kind of a funny way is rendering unto Caesar. You can have this, you can have
Yes.
this world. Mine's love.
Yes. And I think there's something in play with render to Caesar what is Caesar's, render to God's what is God's. He can't touch this. And I think, to your point, he's kind of diffusing the situation as well with Caesar, even though he's still going to die from a political point. But here's what we learn from the Gospel of Mark as well. You know what the kingdom is? Lepers, women, fishermen, it's tax collectors, it's prostitutes, it's everybody you never thought would be part of a kingdom. You know what it is? It's a woman who puts her last 2 copper coins in a box. That's a kingdom. You know what the kingdom is? It's going to be Joseph of Arimathea who comes down and wants a dishonored, shameful body to put in a borrowed tomb. The kingdom is not policy. It's not this legislation. It's not this sword. It's not any of this. It's this is what it looks like. Here's who it is, and here's what they do. And you and I are that way too. The kingdom that we are part of. So Bob, it's from above. It's breaking into this world. Does the kingdom we promote look like that? It's the kingdom that we are part of. Is it open to lepers of our society? Is it open to questionable people? Is it open? Who is it open to?
Pilate makes the bad decision to have him killed.
Yes.
Even after all that's over, if Pilate is insightful and grasps what Jesus is saying,
Yes.
he knows he can still be a part of that kingdom.
He can. And it's for the Peters who deny. And if Judas took the opportunity, it would have been for the Judases who betray. That's the kingdom. What kingdom would have deniers and betrayers in its upper cabinet? Not many. Not many. What, Abraham Lincoln maybe, because he kept his enemies close, the people that he disagreed with. But this is our kingdom, is this little portion of the kingdom. This is for us to ask, is our little portion that we're part of, does it look like what Jesus is saying here? Because if it doesn't, we need a course correction. We need to change. Because it's got to be open, because he tells us it is. Very quickly, what does he say in verse 37, John 18:37? What is his purpose in coming into the world? To do what? Okay, to bear witness of the truth. So Luke 19:10 will tell us to seek and save the lost. With the conversation with Pilate, it's to bear witness to the truth. So here's Pilate's infamous question, and here's ours. What is truth in the context of this conversation?
Is not of this world, that he did not come into this world to be part of this world. He started out separate from this world. He's going out separate from this world. And yet, he is still king.
Okay.
He's not professing to be king of the Jews only, but of a kingdom, not of this world.
Okay. What else? That is good. What else? What's truth in this context? Think if you're Pilate. You're Pilate, and it's a A-B conversation. What is truth?
Everyone that listens to his voice. I mean, that's what he's telling Pilate.
Yep.
Listen to me.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I never had seen this before, and it could be just this translation. Everyone who is of the truth.
Yes.
That's his kingdom. The kingdom is truth. It's here. It's forever. It's now and forever.
And he is
Listen to me.
It is. Listen to me and the truth. So the embedded is that he is innocent. But then the following from that layer after that, because I am innocent, because I am who I say I am, Pilate, the real truth is this: do you want to follow? Matthew got up and left his table and followed. Peter dropped his nets and followed. The leper broke societal rules and left the colony to follow. Pilate, do you want to do that? Well, what is truth? The truth is the answer that you give. It's not just the innocence, as Suzanne mentioned. That's just the physical. The greater is, what do you want to do? And have we heard in the last 18, 24 months, be on the right side of history? Right? We've heard that phrase. You know what Jesus is saying? You want to be on the right side of truth. And the right side of truth is you weigh all the evidence and you make a decision about who I am. And no one can make the decision for you, Pilate. Your wife, you can't call her in and she can't make the decision for you. You can't send me to Herod and have Herod make the decision for you. You can't wiggle your way out and see if Barabbas, maybe they'll choose Jesus over Barabbas. You can't just pass it on. You have to make the decision yourself, Pilate. And every single one of us is the same way. But we got to make that decision every single day. Any questions or comments or observations?
He's asking, to Pilate, this is a death sentence, what you're asking me.
Yes.
You're asking me to give up Caesar and follow you.
Yes.
Caesar has the authority here.
He does.
You're telling me you have greater authority than Caesar?
Right.
And so that's the paradox of Pilate finds himself in.
It is. Scott.
No, I was just going to say, others have really said this already, but Jesus is talking to Pilate as a king.
Yes.
He didn't say it per se, but he's talking as one who has authority to another who has authority. And the truth he's pointing to is this Messiah you've been hearing about, that these people have been looking for. He's standing in front of you.
Yep.
And you've got to, as you say, you've got to make a decision.
It is. And that's the intent of the gospel. He puts every single person in a position to make the decision. But here's the thing. A lot of us think, well, I already made the decision. I walked the aisle, I confessed, I was baptized. No, you made the decision this morning. You made the decision on how you treated your neighbor. I made the decision on how I responded. I made the decision. Because he's not just king one time in my life. He's king every single day. I made that decision. Because if I love him, I will keep his word. I will listen to him. Right, Tom? I made that decision today. It wasn't just so long ago when I obeyed the gospel and did all of that. I made the decision today. And you did too. We all did. That's the position. So let's turn back to Mark chapter 15. And I need somebody to read verse 15 for me. Because I would like to see, just for us, we know Pilate's decision, but we need to hear it as it's read. So as soon as somebody gets there, it doesn't matter who, just read Mark 15, verse 15.
So Pilate, wishing to satisfy the crowd, released for them Barabbas, and having scourged Jesus, he delivered him to be crucified.
So, what's the final straw that breaks the back in the decision-making process for Pilate, according to this verse. I want to satisfy the crowd, to keep the peace, but it is self-preservation. I think Jesus said somewhere along the way that if you're willing to lose your life, you will find it. And if you will find your life, you will lose it. You want to know what that looks like? Mark 15:15 is it. He wishes to satisfy the crowd, so he makes his decision on that. But he's not doing it for the crowd. He's doing it for himself. He just doesn't see it that way. And how many times have I done something and I've convinced myself I am doing it for someone else, but it isn't for someone else. It is because it is for Elisha.
It interests me that there's no record that Jesus answered Pilate when Pilate said, "What is truth?" His answer could very well have been, "I am truth."
And he said that in John 14. And what's interesting about that, it's obviously real life, but it ends like a parable. Some parables will end open-ended because you're supposed to insert yourself. That conversation is, I'm supposed to insert myself with Pilate, because now I got to answer, what is it? What is truth? And boy, don't we need to ask that question today in a lot of different ways. So, I'm sorry, Jeff, go ahead.
No, I was thinking also, it seems like in that vein, Pilate was being vengeful when he put the plaque above Jesus saying, "This is King of the Jews." He's telling the leadership, "Well, you want to play mind games with me? Well, I'm killing your king, so Caesar's not going to touch me.
Yes.
And, I'll take what you sent me and I'll turn it back around on you." So
I will.
he was being a Roman politician.
He was. And that goes to Bailey's point. He had the insight, and you don't last as long as he did without knowing the ins and outs of that game. And the thing is, his conversation with Jesus and the decision he made was no game. And we have no idea what he
Do you think Pilate was worried that Jesus actually was the Son of God? Because he had enough. When Jesus finally answered him and said, "You say I am, rightly so, I am the king," he could have gone out and said, "Well, he says he's the king, not the king." And
I don't.
still tried to release him.
I can say there's enough evidence for him to get to that conclusion. Now, whether he believed that or not, that goes back to that very first question. Are you saying that because others have just said it? Or is it because you really listened? He did. I don't know if he's to the point as what we would say Son of God, in terms of faith and led to salvation. Maybe so, but there's... Maybe. And I think the last-ditch effort is just simply, I'm washing my hands clean. I'm innocent. I'm free of this man's blood. That's a good insight. I'm not really sure. So very quickly, so the scourging happens. So I'm gonna hand him over. So I'm scourge and I want the crucifixion. These are the weapons of scourging. Now, Roman scourging was not anything. The goal of Roman scourging was to inflict as much pain in the most brutal way that you possibly can. That is the entire goal. If you happen to die because of the scourging, that's an unfortunate byproduct. The goal is to get you to the cross and to be crucified, but if you just happen to die because of the scourging, that's really a you problem. That's not us. Roman scourgings is a beating. And it is different from the Jews. How many lashes? 39. So it's 40 minus 1. How many were the limit for Roman centurions or soldiers? There was no limit. So they'd get, a thick, they'd have this. I could only get a picture of this. But they would have these metal balls. They'd attach them around the cords. You've probably seen this, but we need to be reminded that this is the physical suffering. He was wounded for our transgressions is what comes to mind every time I read it. He is hit with this. The first time, it's a deep bruise. The next time, and over until it breaks the skin. Another soldier would grab something like this, a club, and it would be metal balls, but this time it would have spikes attached. So if any of you have ever watched The Passion of the Christ, and how it gets in there and it gets stuck and it's ripped out, then that is the goal. That is the purpose of a scourging. So when Pilate says, have him scourged, he isn't just saying, just go beat him up a little bit. It is to inflict as much pain and as much suffering on Jesus as possible. So the Roman scourging we see in Mark 15 through 20, that a battalion of soldiers is called in. Battalion is estimated at 600. I don't know if 600 participated in the beating, but I don't know if they did not. I don't know if they did, and I don't know if they did not. I would imagine 2 could inflict enough. I could not imagine 10, 20, all the way up to 600. The mockery isn't added to that. The spit, the strikes with the reeds, and then ultimately the crown of thorns that's twisted and then shoved on top of the head. We're going to backtrack a little bit next week because we'll need to talk about the crucifixion. So a couple of details. Simon of Cyrene will be compelled. He will be forced to carry the cross for Jesus. And we'll talk about what that means. But you kind of see what that looks like. I don't know how well you can see this, but there's Cyrene on that little triangle. Right there is Benghazi. Have you heard of that before? Okay, he's from that area. You've heard that within the past several years. So he's from that area. You've got the Mediterranean Sea. You see, so he is, more than likely, he is a Jew. So why else would he be up there? Maybe for trade, possibly. But he's in there for Passover. It's too coincidental. So he is from the continent of Africa. This gives you a better picture, kind of where everything is on here. So you got this little area here, Cyrene. You got Libya. You got all of this that's right there. This is where he would have come from. Jesus is going to be taken to Golgotha. This is what it looks like. You can kind of see better at a distance. So those of you that are sitting in the back, you can kind of see the eyes right here and kind of what looks like a mouth. See, it's an older picture, but it's well defined. This is what it looks like close up. So, you got your eyes right here. So he would be up here, up on that ridge. So this place of the skull. This is what it looks like. So it'd be on a map, kind of on the northeast side of Jerusalem. So you got Mount Moriah. What do we know Mount Moriah from? Abraham, and what happened there? He almost offered his son, and what's interesting, his only begotten son. So his only unique son. I know Bill and I have talked about what that would be. Golgotha is a part of Mount Moriah. You remember what Isaac asked Abraham? You remember on their way up? Where is it? And what does Abraham say? God will provide. That's what Moriah means. Well, little did he know that thousands of years later he would provide, but it would not be for just a select group of people. It would be for everyone. So he climbs. So you got Mount of Olives. You got Mount Moriah that's right there. So this is what it kind of looks like. You kind of stare off. So you can kind of see how it is. This one as well. So where Jesus is walking from to Golgotha is about 600 to 700 yards away. That's kind of the distance. So this kind of gives you a big picture of what that looks like. Real quick, because I know we'll be wrapping up. Most pictures have Jesus depicted carrying the cross, right? And it's the full T, the letter T, that tau, it looks like it. He's carrying, that's probably not the case. What he carried more likely was the crossbeam. That pole was already there, or as we would call it. I know it's something else, but that's already there. He's carrying that crossbeam. It probably weighed somewhere between 110 to 150 pounds, just depending on what it was. But he had to carry it. So I got this picture because this is what looks very well. And so Jeff, you see the sign up there and what you were talking about, King of the Jews, is kind of. But this is what Jesus would have looked like, most likely carrying this crossbeam. So imagine you've lost probably 4 to 5 pints of blood. You're dehydrated. You've been awake since midnight Friday morning. You've been betrayed. You've been denied. You've been interrogated. False witness after false witness. You've bounced from Pilate to Herod to Jewish authority, back to Pilate. You've been scourged. You've had all of these things, and now they tie about 110 to 150 pound bar to your shoulders, and you've got to carry it around 600 to 700 yards away. Simon is compelled to carry that. I'm sure there's a lesson in there somewhere. I wonder if it's deny yourself, carry your cross. Maybe. Just throwing it out there. Everybody's got to have one. So we're gonna next week, I'm sure you've probably done this before yourself. If you haven't, then it may be eye-opening. But we'll read a physician's view of the crucifixion. What took place, medically speaking, with all of this. This is our Lord. This is what it takes for the kingdom to come into this world. This is what the kingdom is built on. It's not built on power. It's not built on holding power. It's not built on exercising power. It is built on letting it all go. And every first day of the week, we remember this. With a body that was given and blood that was shed. The lesson is yours.